culture, I don't care what major culture or major civilization you're talking about in history, you will find this story repeated. This is before the gospel, before the coming of Jesus Christ. When you look at the culture in Canaan of the Canaanites, the land that the Israelites would eventually take over, they worshipped a woman by the name of Ashtart and her son Baal. Does that ring a bell? Baal worship? That's Tammuz, another name for Tammuz. Ashtaroth or Ashtart is another name for Semiramis. The Roman culture had Venus and Cupid. Venus is the mother. You know, men are from Mars and women are from Venus or whatever it is. Venus is the mother. Cupid is the miracle baby. You have Eros and Aphrodite in the Greek culture. Isis and Horus in the Egyptian culture. But in every culture that you look at, you have this same story, and this is before the days of Jesus Christ. A story, a legend, a religion that's built around this thing of Nimrod, who said, we will rebel, who built a tower in Babylon called the Tower of Babel that was to reach up to heaven. Not for the purpose of providing a staircase to actually go to heaven, but to study the stars, to use it as a zygot, an astrological observatory, that is, to get their horoscopes. And they were very much into astrology. You can read about this in Isaiah chapter 47. Every occultic practice, wizardry, astrology, necromancy, all the bizarre things in all cults and occultic activity have their roots, Isaiah 47 tells you very specifically, have their roots in this Babylon, mystery Babylon religion. So they had their celebrations. Ishtar, where they celebrated in the springtime. After 40 days of Lent, 40 days of fasting. I'm getting ahead of myself a bit. They had the golden egg of Astarte in the Babylon religion, celebrated in all ancient cultures, centered in Babylon. The golden egg, which was commemorating the amazing, miraculous pregnancy of Semiramis, or Venus, or Eros, or whatever culture you might be talking about. Ashtart, the woman who was miraculously impregnated. They have the golden egg, the coloring of eggs. And then when you come around December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, all cultures had the celebration of the resurrection of Tammuz, the boy that was killed and came back. They would take Yule logs. The word Yule in Chaldean, Babylonian, simply means sun, S-O-N. You would put the Yule log in the fire, and the next morning, lo and behold, where the Yule log was there, burned in the fire. Oh man, it's a bummer, gone, disappeared, wiped out, toast. But in the next morning, you'd wake up, and there would be an evergreen tree decked with silver and gold fastened to a stand. Oh, where do you get that? Jeremiah chapter 10. Just read it on your own. Jeremiah chapter 10 talks specifically about the customs of the Babylonian people being vain, where they take a tree and fasten it with a stand and deck it with silver and gold. And God warns the people about that very specifically. The customs of the people are vain, for one cuts a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands with the axe. They deck it with silver, with gold. They fasten it with nails, with hammers, so that it moves not. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Yule logs and evergreen trees and colored eggs and bunnies and all the rest. It all has its roots, without question, in the culture and religion of Babylon. Now, in the Babylonian religion, they called this woman Semiramis, or other cultures called her Venus, or Ashtaroth, or whoever. In every culture, she is called the Queen of Heaven. She is venerated. She is worshiped as the Queen of Heaven. And the scriptures deal with this subject again. The Old Testament prophets indict the people of Israel and Judah for getting sucked into the worshiping of the Queen of Heaven. And they're warned very, very strongly, do not worship this so-called Queen of Heaven. The leader of the Babylonian religion was called the Pontifex Maximus, or the keeper of the bridge, literally. The Pontifex Maximus was the head guy, the big man in Babylon. And perhaps if you're from a certain background or tradition, that may ring a bell. The Pontifex Maximus, a title for the head of the Babylonian cultish mystery religion. And it just so happens that the keeper of the bridge, that is the bridge between God and man, was the Pontifex Maximus. He was the man that would allow people to truly have their sins absolved. He was also one who would sprinkle holy water, burn incense, and demanded celibacy from the Babylonian priesthood. Don't take my word for it. Do the hours of research that I've done. I can recommend to you several books. The classic, perhaps, is by Alexander Hislop, Hislop, called The Two Babylons. It's in our bookstore, I believe. Should be. And perhaps even a more interesting one for most of us, certainly more readable, is Dave Hunt's work, which I believe will become the classic work on this matter, called A Woman Rides the Beast. And I was just told that one of the sisters here in the fellowship has made sure that that's in the Medford Public Library now. So if you don't want to buy it, you can go check it out at the library. Be that as it may, an excellent work. Hislop's book is a classic work, and a score of other works I can give to you if you wish to follow it through further. But what you begin to see is something odd and bizarre happening. A counterfeit, a false religious system that is based upon astrology, mysticism, a legend that parallels rather uncannily that which is true gospel, almost as though it was known ahead of time. Someone had to be pretty sharp to come up with that kind of parallelism. Someone who would come across as an angel of light, who would have knowledge of the plan of salvation from perhaps before the world began. Now you have this religion in Babylon, but something happened that I got to talk to you about. Here you have the Pontifex Maximus. Here you have forced celibacy of their priests, holy water, incense, bells. Here you have these pagan festivals, Ishtar in the springtime, and what the Romans would end up calling Saturnalius right around the 24th and 25th of December. But Babylon historically fell to the Medes and Persians. Now again, if you remember your studies in the book of Daniel, you might recall the story. Babylon, the whole civilization collapses. The Medes and Persians take it over. And the Medes and Persians are against this Babylonian cult, this Babylonian religion. They have their own agenda, you see. So The priesthood, the Pontifex Maximus and the boys, moved the entire center of operation from Babylon, the city. They move it from Babylon, the city, to Pergamos. Now, again, that might ring a bell in the ears of some of you, because Pergamos was one of the churches that Jesus addressed that we studied in Revelation 2 and 3. And I haven't the time to go back there, but if you go back, you'll see how it all fits together amazingly. They moved the center from Babylon to Pergamos, a city in Turkey. But in the year 133 BC, Pergamos was bequeathed to Rome, because Rome now was in power. And Pergamos was no longer an independent city in 133 BC. It was given to the Romans. So, follow the money, folks. That's always the name of the game. The money was in Babylon. It goes to Pergamos, which was the hot place to be, but now Pergamos has been swallowed up by Rome. And so the Pontifex Maximus and the boys, who are dressed in scarlet and red and called cardinals, they move to where, do you suppose? They move to Rome, because that now is the power base. The Roman Empire is very much embracing this mystery Babylon religion, with all that goes along with it. All of the festivals and pageantry and tall hats and scarlet robes and all the rest. They say, this is great. It really, quite frankly, fit in with their circus mentality. They're wanting to see big things. Not big hair, but big hats, flowing robes and all the rest. They just embraced it readily. The Roman Empire did. When this happened, you now have this Babylonian religion celebrating Saturnalia, December 24th, 25th, Ishtar in the springtime. All of the events are now in Rome and based out of Rome, but it's still the Babylonian religion. But now you got a problema. What problem is that? Right around 322 AD, a Roman emperor becomes a Christian, at least he claims to be. Who can recall his name? Constantine. Constantine claims to have seen a sign in the sky, a flaming cross that said, in this sign, conquer. Constantine right then was struggling to grab the reins of power for control of the Roman Empire. He was in a civil war. And as I've said before, there's a debate that goes on to this day. Was Constantine sincere? Did he really convert to Christianity? Or was he simply seeing a new source of troops? The Christian Coalition. Ralph Reed. Was it a prudent move politically? Was it a brilliant strategy? Did Constantine see, hey, there's a whole huge group of people in my empire who are not involved in the process because we're all a bunch of pagans, but if I became a Christian, they would stand with me, they would march beside me, they would fight for me. As I've said before, I do not know. Heaven will reveal whether Constantine was sincere in his conversion or whether he was simply astute politically. The debate rages. You can read all sorts of things on both sides of the issue, and people write very passionately on both sides, by the way. But be that as it may, Constantine becomes emperor, and with the help of the Christians who stood by him and fought for him, he now gives the Edict of Toleration, which no longer allows the persecution of Christians as had been happening, but rather the acceptance ultimately of Christians and the embracing of Christianity as the state religion. But what does he do? He's got a problem. He has all these Babylonian religions trappings. The priesthood, the pagan festivals, the churches, they're all over the place. These pagan temples. So what he does is, with the help of his mother, who fits into the story in an amazing way, and if you come to Israel with us, we'll show you how Constantine's mother enters into the scene, but that's another story. But what he does is this. He says, look, it's not going to be a problem. We don't have to fire all these priests and close down all of our fantastic holidays. We'll just change them. You guys can still wear your high hats, and you can still wear your scarlet robes, and you can still sprinkle holy water, only it's no longer in the Babylonian system of Semiramis and Tammuz and Nimrod, or in their case, Cupid and Venus, but rather now it's Mary and Jesus. Same thing, guys. Close enough, eh? What's the big deal? And we'll celebrate the 40 days of mourning over the death of Nimrod. We'll just call that Lent, and we'll just kind of do the same thing, and then we'll go into Easter, whatever. We'll have bunnies and eggs. It's okay. We'll just continue on like nothing really is different. We'll just celebrate, though, the resurrection of Jesus, and Christmas we'll just make the green trees the tree of eternal life in Jesus Christ, you see. And everything, you see, that was in pagan Babylon was swallowed up in Constantine's new embracing of Christianity. The problem was, these guys were not Christians, these priests and Pontifex Maximus and all the rest. They were just ordered to change the names of the cast of characters, but they still had their own rebellion within them. Well, John, I don't like where you're going with this talk. It seems like you go here every so often and then you always have to backtrack. Fact of the matter is, this is the truth. This is history. It's why I began the study by saying I don't like to identify myself as a pastor. I don't like the word religion. Because as you go on through the history of now official Christianity that was based in the Babylonian mystery religion, you have so much corruption and so much pollution that it makes you sick as you read through history. Revelation chapter 17, we see that Jesus is going to come on the scene and declare, enough is enough. This is after, keep in mind, all the true believers in any denomination, in any system, have been extracted in the rapture and taken to heaven. But you still have a system that's left. And in this case, a system based in Rome, a very powerful system. Once the true believers, clergy, laity, priests, people, bishops, pastors, reverends, whoever they might be, congregants, communicants, whoever. Once the true believers are taken up, you still have a system intact, and it's called the whore of Babylon. I will show you, verse 1, the judgment of the great whore that sits upon many waters. Many waters simply means this whore, this system, mystery, Babylon the harlot, is transglobal. It's not limited to one simple geographical location. It's worldwide. The kings of the earth have committed fornication.